Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and we are looking at something pretty unique today,
I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, we're taking a look at the Kramer WM-8D.
specifically the model 60000139. And at first glance, it just looks like a standard wall box, standard boardroom fare.
Yeah, just a typical speaker grill on the wall.
But if you actually peel back that grill, this thing represents a really aggressive collision between the IT department and audiophiles.
It really does. I mean, it is the absolute epitome of AV over IP. We aren't just talking about a speaker with a network port slapped onto the back of it.
Right.
This is a fundamental shift in how we actually distribute sound in commercial spaces.
And that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Figuring out how AV over IP actually works in practice using this specific 8-inch two-way wall-mounted speaker as our lens.
Because usually when you think about wall-mounted audio, you picture these long copper runs back to a central rack of amplifiers.
Right, maybe a 70-volt system if you're trying to cover a lot of ground in a building.
Exactly. But here, the copper is completely gone.
Gone. Just entirely replaced by a single Ethernet cable.
Just one cable. And we should be really clear, for anyone listening who manages a network, we aren't just talking about data control here. This is fully active via PoE, power over Ethernet.
Which, I mean, that's standard for a VoIP phone or maybe a security camera, sure. But driving a robust 8-inch two-way speaker system solely off a switch,
Yeah.
that requires some serious current.
It does, and that is why the specs here matter so much. This unit actually supports PoE++ Ray, which is the highest tier.
Okay.
So if your network switch can handle the load, the WM8D draws enough power to hit a peak of 30 watts.
So translating that to actual audio output, you were looking at 105 decibels SPL.
Yeah, that is not background elevator music.
No, that's filling a massive lecture hall.
Yeah.
And the crazy part to me is you do all of that without ever calling an electrician.
That's the huge logistical win for you as the installer. You completely eliminate the need to find electrical outlets high up on walls or run heavy speaker wire back to a centralized closet.
You're just moving the amplification right to the edge of the network.
Amplification and the processing, because this thing speaks Dante, obviously.
Which is basically table stakes for digital audio these days.
For sure. But Kramer didn't just make it a basic Dante endpoint. They packed a full DSP brain right inside the cabinet.
So it has an amplifier, a digital signal processor, and a mixer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It completely changes your system architecture. Instead of a centralized processor handling the EQ, the filters, and the compression for an entire zone.
The speaker's just doing it locally.
Right. It runs its own parametric EQ and high-pass or low-pass filters right there on the onboard chip.
Which gives you a massive redundancy advantage. Because if your central processor crashes in a traditional setup, the entire building goes completely quiet. But here, the intelligence is distributed.
It is, though, to be fair, managing distributed intelligence can be an absolute nightmare for an IT team.
Oh yeah, if you don't actually know where physically speaker 42 is mounted.
The classic IT headache. Digital visibility versus physical reality. But Kramer actually addressed that.
They put a utility feature in the software, right?
Yes, a specific Find Me feature. You can just trigger a tone generator on a specific unit just to locate it in the room.
I love that. It's so simple. But it saves you from wandering a huge warehouse on a ladder trying to read tiny MT addresses off the back of a mounted unit.
Absolutely. Speaking of the mount, though, we shouldn't ignore the acoustic hardware. We've been talking about this thing like it's a networked computer.
Right, but it still actually has to move air to make sound.
Right. Physically, it features that 8-inch polypropylene cone we mentioned earlier, paired with a 1-inch soft dome tweeter.
But the stat that really caught my eye was the dispersion. 124 degrees.
That wide coverage is critical for the efficiency of an install.
Because a tighter beam would mean you need way more units just to avoid dead spots.
Exactly. Like in a large boardroom or an auditorium. With 124 degrees, you get really consistent coverage using fewer endpoints.
And since you're putting these into commercial spaces, ceilings, drywall, corners, the mounting options are actually pretty versatile.
Yeah, it uses this easy mount bracket, so it allows for vertical, horizontal, or even corner mounting.
And it also takes standard VS 75mm threads.
Which is incredibly smart because sometimes those proprietary brackets just do not work for a specific architectural challenge. And looking at safety, the enclosure uses V0 flame retardant materials.
Completely non-negotiable for plenum spaces or public venues.
Yeah.
You can't just hang a fire hazard on the wall because it has good connectivity.
Right. So when you step back and look at the WM-8D as a whole, the line is totally blurring. You manage it like a printer. You power it like a security camera, but it performs like a full PA system.
It really transforms a speaker from a passive component into a highly active, intelligent network device.
Yeah.
It completely reframes the job description of AV integrator.
How so?
Well, you aren't tuning a room with a screwdriver anymore. You're tuning it with software policy,
That's a great point.
which leads to a pretty complex future. And it's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today.
Go for it.
As audio gear fully morphs into networked computing, the entire maintenance schedule changes. You aren't just dusting speaker cones. You're managing firmware and network security. In this new architecture, the biggest threat to your audio system isn't a blown fuse or a loose wire. It's network configuration.
Wow.
What happens when your building's firewall, and not the volume knob, is the reason the music stops.
It is a brave new world for audio.
It really is. Thanks for jumping into this deep dive with us. Go check your firewall settings, and we'll catch you next time.